All right, welcome in everybody. It's going to be episode number 16 of the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. Thank y'all for tuning in with us. Monty, what's up, man? How are you, buddy?
Oh, excuse me.
Bless you, Jesus.
Other than that, doing pretty good. Um, good to be back. Later in the week, it's Friday the 15th, day before another good week of football coming up. Obviously, with our work schedule, ended up having to be this way. So, but excited to be back nonetheless. And we're gonna go more playoff ranking conversation heavy. Going to try to anyway. This episode, but still got some previews, some recaps first, and then some previews at the end. But I'm gonna try to switch it up just because we're getting to that later point in the season where the conversations of the rankings start to matter a little bit more. And then we'll get a little opinionated here and there too. But a lot to talk about, and I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll come in, we'll do a little bit of a Week 11 recap for y'all. As always, we'll follow that up with like Monty discussed, our playoff predictions, or not our playoff predictions, but we'll go over the top 25 and then we'll discuss some of the big things in the top 25. And then we'll hit some week 12 predictions, man. We're already on week 12. Discuss a couple of the big games, notable matchups that are happening in week 12. Give y'all our thoughts on those games. And then we'll hit our dubs and duds of the week. And then I will actually close us out with a hot take this week. So we'll let's go ahead, dive right in, man. Week 11, we'll start off. We'll get my pain and misery out of the way. OU went to Mizzou, ended up losing in the brutal fashion, 30-23.
One of the worst ways a team that's black and blue like OU is this year. Just one of the worst ways a team can lose.
Yeah, I mean, so OU takes just so we can give everybody context of this, right? OU takes a 1-touchdown lead with 2 minutes and 14 seconds to go in the fourth quarter. All right. At a minimum.
On a scoop and score, right?
Yeah, on a scoop and score. Yeah, scoop and score fumble. They had just scored off of an offensive drive just before that with about 3:30 to go. Missouri's coming to drive down, their final drive. Scoop and score touchdown. OU's got all the momentum. Everybody's like, oh. At a minimum, right? Missouri does. At a minimum, you're thinking, hey, we'll play for the tie. Missouri drives right down the field. Drew Pine ends up throwing probably the best ball of his freaking career to Theo Weiss, corner of the end zone.
Well, and prior to that was what was it, like 3rd and 17 or something?
Yeah,
to Luther Burden.
Yeah,
dot on the sideline.
Well, the quarterback fell down. So I mean, it's like, he was probably, yeah, it was a great catch. It was a hell of a catch. I think the cornerback probably, if he doesn't fall, I think it was Jacoby Johnson. He's probably got a chance to at least make a little bit of a play on the ball. But falls down. They convert the 3rd and 16 or 17, and then Drew Pine throws a dot, probably the best ball of his freaking career, to Theo Weiss, and he gets a little toe tap in the end zone. I mean, Eli Bowen was in perfect position as well as you can play that. And they just ended up scoring with 1:09 left. So you're like, hey, it's just tied up. OU's got a chance for the maybe get a late field goal here with 1:09 left on the clock. And then Jackson Arnold scrambles out, fumbles, scoop and score. 42 seconds left, and that's going to be all she wrote. Missouri ends up winning 30-23. Man, the offense, they continue to struggle, continue to be an issue. Like I said, whenever you fire your offensive coordinator midseason, you're not expecting a dramatic swing or a dramatic fix coming. It's just, the offensive coordinator got fired because, hey, that's how bad we were playing. And then we're looking at it, we're like, well, we lost two, this week again, two brand new tackles. Our other two tackles, they were hurt. So started injured again on the offensive line. And Jackson Arnold, man, he's playing scared. He's got happy feet. He's, bailing out of clean pockets. He's, man, it seems like all the sacks he's taken this year, because he's taken a lot. OU's offensive line is getting up lots of sacks. And I think it's got to their quarterbacks' heads a little bit, that's sped up their clock, and now they're thinking too much about where's the rush coming from, where's my pressure coming from, and they're not able to play effectively at the quarterback position. And it just kind of speaks to, it's not going to improve this year. Don't expect significant improvement, against Alabama or against LSU with the remaining 2 games. Venables, he's got to get the offensive coordinator hire right, and that's about all I got on it. There's not really a worse way to lose. I thought OU was going to win this game. They looked like the better team for the majority of this game. Defense is still playing lights out. But, after this game, a lot of people had there's the Brent Venables, fire Brent Venables stuff was, coming out.
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't necessarily agree with that yet.
No, like I said, I'm not there yet. Though even the OU media guys are calling for it. They're like, the beat reporters are like, I just don't see how, you can roll with Brent Venables after this. It's like, one, Brent Venables, he's a defensive coordinator. That defense has turned around in 3 years. Last year before Jeff Levy left, that was a top 5 offense in both yards per game and scoring offense. It's like, so what'd you have? You had to change a quarterback and to change a coordinator on the offensive side of the ball, and you lost 5 starters on the offensive line. Yeah, the offense took a step back, but he's only 1 year removed away. It's like, if you want to give Brent Venables, well, he's at fault for this offense. Well, he also gets the credit for the one the year before. Don't split the credit,
Well, yeah, and that's the thing too, right, about OU is that people this year, and this is a normal SEC fan base reaction, right? Tennessee's done it in the past. Alabama did it for a hot second this year. They forget that last year it was a 10-win Oklahoma team, and you won the Red River rivalry. So it's easy to forget that stuff when you're down in a slump right away. Likely 5-7 at most 7-5 right now, but likely 5-7 unfortunately. So yeah, is it a down year? Of course, but Brett Venables obviously made the correct hire in the offensive coordinator. Last year it's just that he left because he was so good, and so this year obviously it didn't end up panning out. But at the same time, on the other side of the ball, right, you got probably the number 1 or at least top 5 defense in the entire country. So it's just finding out, who that next guy is going to be. Like, you need to find a Chip Kelly somehow. It's trial and error for the most part. When it comes to hiring guys like that, like I don't want to take anything away from him, but I talked about Tennessee because we had Alex Golish as our offensive coordinator in 2022, right? And everyone remembers that 2022 Tennessee offense. Then he leaves for USF to be head coach, and then we hire our quarterback coach. Not a bad coordinator, but he's no Alex Golish. So it's just, it's a down year, unfortunately, for Oklahoma. An impatient fan base. Welcome to the SEC.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, calling for Brent Venables' job is not. That's DEFCON 5 too early, and I think they'll end up being fine. It's Oklahoma, and Brent Venables is the right guy, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to give him any outs or excuses, but it's like, me and you even talked about it this week. You looked at the K Ford rankings. Oklahoma has the toughest schedule.
Yeah.
As far as, how the seasons play out.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah, they're
based
the clear
on where
cut.
Everyone's at now, yep.
They're the clear cut number 1 toughest schedule. And it's like, okay, so you had that. You had the offensive coordinator that obviously wasn't the right hire. You had young quarterbacks, new O-line that turned out to probably be one of the worst that Bill Beanbo's put on the field. You had top 5 wide receivers going. It's like, you can't play one-dimensional ball coming into the SEC and also playing that schedule.
Well, I was going to say, and then having the hardest schedule as it pans out in the hardest conference. So
exactly. So like, if you're playing one-dimensional ball, you're not going to be competitive. Brent Venables knows that. But we got more coming up on the offensive coordinator hire, so I don't want to spoil it just yet. So let's go ahead and roll on, man. Let's hit the Mississippi State versus Tennessee. Tennessee, as we both kind of predicted, won that game pretty handily, 33-14. Probably the biggest thing that came out of it was questions about Nico's health. Dylan Sampson, he put up another 100-yard game. He's up to 7th in the nation in rushing yards. Looking solid.
He's right around that 1,100-yard mark, and he's tied or 1 touchdown behind the lead for most rushing touchdowns this year, and only behind Ashton Jeanty. No, this game. I mean, I didn't want to. Yeah, he's still my Heisman front runner, but
still.
Which a lot of people apparently disagree, which is weird and it's insane to me. But anyways, I digress. I didn't want to harp on this game too much, just because we went in, did what we were supposed to do, and got out. Gaston Moore, our backup quarterback, he played fine. And he did what he was supposed. He did what he needed. Right, that was kind of the moral story of the game. Like you said, question marks about Nico going into both Nico and actually Dante Thornton, who right now is our top receiver. Big question mark is going into the Georgia game because they're both questionable. At the beginning of the week, like I said, today's Friday, November 15th. At the beginning of the week, Heupel in the beginning of the week press conference had mentioned that Nico was doing well. He was looking good for this coming weekend, but he never said that, and he still hasn't said that he's playing. Obviously, the official injury report came out for Georgia and Tennessee. I believe it was yesterday, 2 days ago, and it showed both Dante Thornton and Nico questionable for Saturday. So a lot of nerves, and it's. I don't want to say it's a deciding factor for this game, but it's kind of a deciding factor for this game if Nico plays. Like, we, as Tennessee fans, believe in Gaston Moore, but he's not Nico. And when you're going into Athens, a sold-out night game in Athens, where their season's on the line and it's Kirby Smart's season on the line, Gaston Moore is just not going to get it done. I mean, if he does and proves me wrong, trust me, I'll be totally okay with it. But I just don't see it happening, and so we would be able to survive, I think, fine without Dante Thornton playing because we have a pretty deep receiving core, but we need the guy that's going to get them all the ball. Dylan Sampson, we're gonna run the ball, but if we're one dimensional because we don't have a freaking quarterback that can throw the ball without turning the ball over, it's not going to work, especially with Georgia's defense. Now on the flip side. Well, I guess I'll wait for that. I was getting too far ahead of myself. I was talking about the Tennessee-Georgia game. But overall, Mississippi State game, good game. Just some question marks.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Some question marks coming out of health, but overall, Tennessee did what we expected them to do, did what they needed to do. Let's roll on. Colorado at Texas Tech. Colorado ended up winning 41-27. Now, this game was a little bit tighter in the fourth quarter than that final score kind of indicates. However, Colorado, they looked like the better team. They were consistently, Texas Tech jumped out on them early, but Colorado rallied back with a big third quarter, put up 21 points in the third quarter. They kind of matched, Texas Tech, they did their thing with Taj Brooks running the ball. He put up 137 yards. Colorado kind of still remains one-dimensional this year with just, mainly throwing the ball, 291 yards passing. Ended up just boiling down to turnover margin. They didn't put the ball in jeopardy at all. Texas Tech gave them 3 turnovers, and that ended up kind of being the difference in this one.
Yeah, looking back, I was like, man, I don't know why I predicted this game the way that I did. I predicted Texas Tech, and like I said, looking back, Colorado was the better team. Granted, Texas Tech, they went up 13-0 early, right? It looked like I might have made the right choice. Ended up not being the case. And we had mentioned the, Taj Brooks in the run game, and that was there, right? But I think it just came down to, although Colorado, yes, might be a little one-dimensional through the air, that air raid is still a lot to handle if you're not, an elite defensive backfield, which it showed. And the better team won. So,
yeah, when you look at it, it's like, Shadur Sanders, Travis Hunter, they're first-round picks. It's like, do you have anybody on Texas Tech to combat those guys? Outside of
not on defense.
Exactly, you know what I'm saying. And so, that's kind of what it boiled it down to. Is Colorado's got the 2 best players on the field. And they have the best player on the field. Whether Colorado's on defense and Travis Hunter's playing defense, or they're on offense and he's playing offense with Shadur Sanders. So, big win for Colorado. They're looking good. They control their own fate. We'll talk on that a little bit more later when we hit the top 25.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. UGA at Ole Miss. Though this one, I think we both picked Georgia. You said you were on the fence about it, but you did. I think you still picked Georgia. I
went
more
with Georgia.
And you can clip me on the last episode. Like I was shocked as anybody, but you can clip me on the last episode. I said, there's no way. I don't see Kirby Smart doing what they did on Saturday. They lost to Ole Miss 28-10. I was like, there's no way on any earth or in any dimension. I was like, Kirby Smart lets this team drop another game. They did, obviously, but no credit taken away from Ole Miss. What Ole Miss did speaks volumes about who they actually are. I think this was an identity game for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. So what Lane Kiffin did in the offseason, this past offseason, was basically after the absolute beating they got from Georgia last year, basically built a team to withstand that, which is, I think this is really his first all-rounded, well-rounded SEC team. The D-line, the receivers, the quarterback, and it showed on Saturday. And being at home helped definitely, but man, wasn't really even close. Georgia played hard, so it felt closer, but it never really. 10 points. They scored. I think it was. I don't know if I remember. Did they score?
Almost kicked 5 field goals. So they got
15
points off field goals.
It felt closer, but at the same time, it's like, they still held Georgia to 10 points. And I know you had a couple notes on Carson Beck, so I'll let you get there. But concerning, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, a concern that I saw was Ole Miss, their D-line was getting home rushing 4.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't doing anything special. They were getting home. They were getting to Carson Beck with rushing 4. And you got Tennessee's D-line coming to Athens this next week. So, but anyways, I'll let you talk about this game.
Yeah, so the thing with Carson Beck is he has become very turnover prone this season, which is not something he had really shown. Last year he put
nine interceptions in the last 5 games or something like that? Don't quote me. I'm sure you could find it, but
so in the last 5 games, so it starts at Alabama, so he's 3, 6, 8. No, it's more than that now. Hang on.
Jeez.
5, 8, 11, 12. 12 interceptions in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games.
Okay, so last 6 games.
Yeah, last 6 games, 12 interceptions to only 10 touchdowns. That's what he's put up in SEC play. So since he had that good Week 1 performance against Clemson, who knows how Clemson is. He's also got the game against the FCS opponents, Tennessee Tech, that, he went for 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So that one's covering up a lot for him.
Right.
And as far as his total stat line, Carson Beck has not played good in SEC play. And that's what's really struggled. That's hindered Georgia this year. And for me, that was kind of my question mark coming into this game is, is Georgia going to come in here? Are we going to see the Georgia that took on Texas? Or are we going to see, the Georgia that took on Kentucky? Or the Georgia that, that has looked flawed, at least in their offense? Their defense has still played well. They held Ole Miss out.
Can't keep them off the dang field, though. They ain't getting no rest.
Well, the thing is, and when you got Carson Beck turning the ball over, it's like they're putting them in bad spots. That's
what I'm saying. Short fields, less rest. It's
the same. Georgia's defense is dealing with the same thing Oklahoma's defense is dealing with. So yeah,
winning games.
Yeah. Well, hey, I said So Ole Miss, man, they played good, and like you said, Lane Kiffin, he even mentioned it, in his press conference last year. He's like, we're just not built to compete with Georgia. They built that team. He built this team to compete with Georgia, and they dominated. They, as far as defensive line, they are greatly improved. Jackson Dart he's looked really good this year. Ole Miss looks competitive. We'll see what the rest of the schedule plays out for them. But yeah, big win for Ole Miss here, and a lot of playoff implications that came from this one.
Yeah. Yeah, this next one, Man, it shocked us both. It shocked me less. Bama went to Baton Rouge, play LSU at night in Baton Rouge, Death Valley, and beat the living breaks off of them. I mean, what was it? What was the final? 42-6, 41-6?
42-13 is what it was.
42-13. Okay. 42-13. I mean, and it was every bit of that score. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, I told you before we went live, like I knew that this Bama was in there somewhere. I just didn't know if we were going to see it this year, but I knew it was in there. I just I had that feeling. Obviously, like you were saying, and I'll let you talk about this, but it shows LSU's incompetency when it comes to defending against a running quarterback. With that being said, Jalen Milroe was dominant on the ground all night, and I think that was the difference maker. A lot of things that don't get talked about, though, that I wanted to mention was this Bama defense. I would argue even before the Tennessee game, but at least since the Tennessee game, I mean, they're continuing to trend upwards, and it's starting to look like, you know, classic Saban-esque Alabama team, you know, coached by not Saban anymore, but it looks very Saban-esque. But like I said, I'll let you talk about LSU side, but man, what I noticed was the defense and Jalen Milroe's run domination on the ground.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought after LSU got tore up by Marcel Reed, you know, after, you know, the second half of that A&M LSU game where he came in, I figured, hey, they'll figure out something for a running quarterback. Their defense will put something together with Mike Elko and, that's A&M. Who's their Baker? Is LSU's defense coordinator, came from Missouri last year. And he, I figured he'd put something together, but obviously he hasn't been able to figure out anything for a running quarterback. I mean, Jalen Milroe went 12 attempts for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. He threw for 109 yards passing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They didn't need much from him rushing the ball because LSU was just giving them everything they wanted on the ground. Now, granted, I didn't get to watch too much of this game. I got to catch clips of it. Were you able to watch any of it?
I watched a good bit of it, yeah, and I watched it when I thought we were going to do the episode. I watched it the night before. I watched the highlights, but I mean, like I said, when you watch the highlights, it's just a Jalen Milroe highlight, pretty much.
Yeah. Did LSU did they do any of that same stuff they did in the A&M game with lining the defensive tackles up or the defensive line straight up?
Blake Baker, by the way, you're right.
Blake Baker, yeah, that's what I thought.
Nothing that I saw, no, because I was looking out for it. Granted, when I watched the game, so we were out of town, whenever we had the chance, I was by TV watching whatever game I could watch. So I didn't see it then, and then when I watched the highlights, I didn't see it.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, if they didn't do it again, like I said, I hated that formation. I've discussed enough about it on a previous. That's so dumb. Alabama was up 42-16. I mean, the final score is 42-13, but I mean, LSU ended up scoring with 17 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Alabama's offensive coordinator left the press box and came down on the sideline. The whole offensive staff, you know, they usually sit up in the press box, came down there like, "Hey, we're good. It's done."
Yeah.
So,
man, it was a fourth quarter beatdown.
Yeah, elimination game for LSU. They're out of contention for the playoff. And with that, we mentioned playoff. Let's go ahead and roll into it. All right, let's talk about the top 25.
We'll say since we're rolling into the ranking, the college football playoff ranking, I will say there is actually a scenario that LSU wins the SEC. But anyway, we can start talking about this ranking though. We have
there might be a scenario. There's not a reality.
There is a world that is possible, but no, I'm not holding my breath for that one. It's like almost impossible.
You're gonna have Rick.
But you're saying there's a chance.
You're gonna have Rick and Morty track down that dimension for you because
that's gonna take a while. Gonna take a while for that one.
All right, so no changes really to number 1, still Oregon. Number 2, Ohio State. I mean, after Georgia's loss, you know, not really much debate there. Texas moved up to 3. Penn State back at 4. Indiana at 5. And BYU at 6. We'll just go through. I'll list them all out.
Yeah, just go ahead and just
then
say
we'll go.
who's
Yeah,
where.
yeah. Tennessee's coming in at 7, Notre Dame at 8, Miami 9, Alabama Crimson Tide coming at 10. Ole Miss moves up to 11. Georgia dropped all the way down to number 12, right in front of Boise State and SMU at 13 and 14. A&M is at 15. Kansas State 16, Colorado 17, Washington State at 18, Louisville 19, Clemson 20, followed by a couple SEC teams at 21, 22, and 23 with South Carolina, LSU, and Missouri. And then you got your G5 teams of Army at 24 and Tulane at number 25, rounding out the top 25. So, man, as I went through that list, what is jumping out to you? We can start at the top and we can work our way down because there's a lot of things that I disagree with in it. But let's go ahead and start up top.
And this is why I said at the beginning of the show is that we wanted to really go heavy into this stuff because this is an opinion, and I think most people can agree. Most people probably do agree. If you are any kind of college football fan that's more than a casual fan, you'd agree. It's another bad ranking. It is. Obviously, Oregon at 1, no problem with that. Ohio State at 2, probably no problem with that either. Right, but then you get to Texas, right? So you have 8-1 Texas, 8-1 Penn State. Okay, who has Texas beat? Texas's best win is a 6-4 unranked Vanderbilt team. Okay, and a good loss, right? I don't believe in those, but that's kind of what they're saying. We'll get to that. Loss to Georgia at home, by the way, in Austin. Then you get Penn State. Who's their best win? 6-3 Illinois is the answer to that.
And maybe West Virginia.
No, they're literally their best win. Like that's what people are like. And you can look at their schedule. Best wins an unranked 6-3 Illinois team. But they have a good loss, right, to Ohio State.
Yeah.
Then you have
that game wasn't close, by the way.
No, it wasn't. The score shows.
Yeah, that game wasn't close.
Which they also lost at home, by the way. And then you have Indiana, right? They're 10-0. Okay, fine. They're undefeated, but at the same time, who have they played?
I mean, their best win was probably this week with Michigan.
Which that's what they're saying. That's why they've moved them up 3 spots because they beat the bad Michigan team by 5.
Yeah.
Again, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Now this is where I start talking. So BYU at 6, 9-0. This is a team. They have 2 top 25 wins. They're undefeated. This is the team I believe should be at that number 3 spot. If it were not more about, and this is my point, if it were not about eye test and quality loss, because that's what the committee's saying with these rankings. At least these top 10 rankings, they're saying quality loss and eye test are better than wins, are more important than wins, because Texas only passes the eye test and has a good loss. Penn State passes the eye test and only has a good loss. Indiana passes the eye test and hasn't lost. BYU has the better wins, does not pass the eye test, and is undefeated. And they're sitting at 6. Then you have Tennessee, right? Our best win is Alabama. That's our best win, which is showing to be a pretty good win, right? But bad loss, so they don't deserve to be at Texas or where Texas and Penn State are at because they have a bad loss to Arkansas, right? Which, by the way, they're 5-4. Vanderbilt, who Texas's best win is, they're 6-4. They're both unranked. Anyways, then you brought up Miami. Who has Miami beat? They're sitting at number 9 at 9-1. They did drop 5 spots at least, but Miami. Who has Miami beat? Their best win is what? Virginia Tech. I honestly don't know the answer to this one, but I know they haven't beat anybody.
It's Louisville, number 19.
Okay, so they at least have a top 25 win, which
they do.
Fine with me. So, but they just lost to who? Georgia Tech, unranked Georgia Tech. So that would be their not quality loss,
right?
And then you have Alabama at 10. I have no problem with that. Ole Miss at 11, no problem with that. Honestly, they have a fighting chance, so I agree with it. But Georgia at 12, to drop 9. Yes, they have 2 losses, but you're setting a precedent. The problem with putting Georgia at 12 right now, after that being 7-2, you're setting a precedent as the committee. If you leave Georgia, so say Georgia loses hypothetically to Tennessee, right, and then they end up winning out after that, so they go 9-3, and they don't make the playoff. But you and I could probably agree that Georgia would probably still deserve to be in at 9-3.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, because if you put a Kirby Smart-led team, Georgia team, with the athletes and the talent that they have in the playoff, it's kind of like when you put Alabama in the playoff with Saban. It was, what was it, 2020, I believe, is when they won their last national championship, if I remember correctly. And that was when they were Alabama was. It was like the 10-game season. But my point is, Georgia's probably better than a lot of these teams, realistically. Like, neutral site, BYU versus Georgia. Who are you picking? I'm probably going
Georgia. Yeah.
Right? So that's my point. Indiana, Georgia, neutral site, I'm probably going with Georgia. So the problem is what the precedent that they're setting is if they end up going 9-3 and don't make it, and you have these 4 freaking top 5 Big Ten teams make it, what you're saying is the easier you make your schedule in one of these conferences, the more likely you're going to make the playoff. So why would you want to play anybody why would you want to play Tennessee? And this is as Georgia. Why would you want to play Tennessee or Alabama or Oklahoma or Texas every year when you don't have to make it? So I don't care what I'm ranked in the playoff. I don't care what I get. I don't care if I'm 12. I don't care if I'm 5. I don't care if I'm 6. The first round bye would be nice. But if you don't schedule these and you have an undefeated conference record because you play Arkansas, Auburn, Vandy, and there's no digs to these teams, but just based on right now, Arkansas, Vandy, those Oklahoma. Teams, and you go 6-7-0 in your conference, and you win the conference, you get that bye. But your other games, man, you're not playing anybody, and you're trying to schedule these conference games outside of the tougher teams because what they're showing right now is that you don't have to have the strength of schedule to make it. As long as you're in one of these conferences, you don't have to have the strength of schedule.
Well, I mean, the thing about it is that, SEC teams, they don't really have the choice. You know what I mean? You can't, who are you going to dodge in this conference? You know what I mean?
Well, you used to not be able to choose up until this year, because it used to be the SEC East and the SEC West. The East always had to play the East, and you'd have like 2 games against the West each year, or 1 game, and vice versa, same thing West to East. Now the SEC is it's top to bottom, it's all one. So you actually have more freedom to choose who you play.
But my thing is, who's your slouch? You know what I mean?
Well, what do you mean?
I'm saying, who's your slouch team? Alabama just lost to Vanderbilt, who's always considered the slouch. Florida's been playing competitive football.
Well, when you talk top down, SEC is tough, but there are look at Ohio State, right? So the Big Ten top down is not, no matter what anybody says, it's not the same as the SEC. So look at Ohio State and Georgia as the same. Just like Ohio State, Georgia's going to continue to recruit like they do. It's Kirby Smart. They're going to continue to get the best athletes, best talent. So they're going to always be the better team. So if you can play consistently the back half of that SEC, you're going to win those games most likely.
Yeah.
So yes, you say where's the drop off? There's not a whole lot, but Georgia's going to continue to do what they do. Just don't schedule the Texases, the Tennessees, the Alabamas every year, or try not to, because you can argue that they played Florida and Florida played them well. You could argue that Florida might have won that game had Lagway stayed in, so there's not a huge gap. But did they win? Yes, that's my point.
Yeah.
So you're setting that precedent that I don't really like, especially in this 12-team thing. It's like, okay, so I'll just schedule the easy games and, we'll ride it out. And we'll get in. We'll get in as the 12 seed or the 9 seed or the, whatever.
Well, I mean, that's kind of, the thing about it is, if I go and look at, Indiana, nothing against them, right? They're
at one of America's teams. I love that they're doing it.
But if Oklahoma played Indiana in the schedule, we're talking about Oklahoma being a playoff team. An Oklahoma team with severe flaws. Severe flaws.
Mm-hmm.
They very well could be a playoff team. And that's And that's kind of I guess that's kind of the point you're making, or the argument you're making,
Right.
more or less.
Yes, it's the schedule. It's if you were to leave, and people are going to, well, we don't have a whole lot of listeners. I'm just going to say people will probably come at my head for this, but the two people that listen will probably come at my head for this. But
bring it on. There's two of us, two of y'all.
Yeah, but I do genuinely believe a 9-3 Georgia team deserves a playoff spot over an 11-1. Assuming that, like, say Indiana got their crap rocked by Ohio State, 11-1. I believe that a 9-3 Georgia team deserves it over an 11-1 Indiana team, just based on schedule. And people, SEC bias. You're an SEC fan, so you're biased. But look at the schedule. Georgia has their strength of schedule is way tougher than Indiana. Indiana's is oh crap, I don't remember. I think it's like 102. Their strength of schedule is like 102nd in the country.
Yeah.
Georgia's is like top 10.
Yeah.
You're gonna lose. Like, you're bound to lose. And they say, well, it's Georgia. They're not supposed to lose. Right. It's like, exactly. Because they're a better team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree with you on that thing. So what it shows, the committee's showing, is that strength of schedule doesn't matter, especially if they leave a 9-3. If Georgia wins and they end up winning the SEC, okay, whatever. But saying if Georgia, and honestly, if I was the committee, I would hope that happens, because you're setting a dangerous precedent if you leave out a 9-3 Georgia team, because it's showing the strength of schedule doesn't matter. Well, it's different with 3 loss, so I can't say eye test, because Georgia does pass the eye test. But it's really, strength of schedule is one of those factors that also doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to give this guy too much credit, but, Lincoln Riley had said in the offseason prior, leading up to the season, he's like, we're probably going to have to reevaluate these non-conference games to see if they benefit us playing. Is there any benefit with the 12-team playoff for us to schedule an LSU or schedule an Alabama?
Right.
Is that
because you want to, because as Lincoln Riley, at USC, like, now they're in the Big Ten, so it's a little different. But like, it used to be where you would want, like, especially in the BCS, but even in the 14 playoff scheme, it used to be where you want to play like the Notre Dames out non-conference. Like, you would want to play the Notre Dames, you'd want to play the LSUs, because if you win, it shows that you're a good team and you get the respect at the end of the season. And if you lose, with how the committee shows it, quality loss, but you expect to win those games if you have a good team. Now, it's like, why would I do that if strength of schedule doesn't matter?
Exactly.
I'd schedule UT Martin and Tennessee Tech every week.
Show me coasting to 12-0.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that was kind of a rant of mine.
It was. It went on a little bit.
But SMU was the other one that I wanted to talk about.
I do too. Yeah.
And I'll just mention it, and then I'll let you talk about it, because SMU. Yeah. So SMU is at 14, right? Behind Boise State. They're sitting at 8-1. Yep. So 1 loss to the number 6 undefeated team, BYU.
Yep.
So where's their quality loss respect?
Dude, you ain't gonna. I completely agree with that, because, I mean, if you compare
the inconsistencies, it's just insane.
Yeah, it's insane, because, I mean, Miami, I get it, they had a lot of preseason hype. SMU, I was probably one of the main ones pushing that little hype train, because I believed SMU was a good team. Now, when you go back and you compare, hey, let's look at who Miami's beaten, who has SMU beaten. It's like we just said, well, Miami's best win is Louisville. Well, SMU also beat Louisville. Miami's second best win, it's Duke. Well, SMU also beat Duke.
But the difference is Miami's lost to Georgia Tech and SMU's lost to number 6 undefeated BYU.
Exactly, and they lost to BYU. They lost to BYU at BYU's home. They were away at BYU, and they lost by 3 points. And it ain't like they got blown out or anything like that. It's like they lost to
Miami. Miami was in Miami, or no, never mind. They were in Atlanta. Never mind.
Yeah. But there's one more. I'm pretty sure BYU has or SMU has another good win. Let me see. I mean, they beat a 6-4 TCU team. Duke, and they beat Pitt. They beat Pitt when Pitt was 7-0.
And it wasn't particularly close either.
No, dominated Pitt. And when Pitt was a ranked team, now granted, everybody's like, "Oh, well, Pitt, they weren't anything good." It's like, well, that's not what everybody was saying before they played SMU. And
Yeah,
it's the argument between SMU and Miami. There's not one. There's not a case you can make for
well,
Miami being ahead of.
It's eye test. That's my point. It's eye test. They pass the eye test more so than SMU does.
But how do they? They've been in. We've talked about how close Miami's.
Heisman front runner and brand bias. That is basically what eye test is. It's brand bias and they're more on national television than SMU is. Why?
No.
Because of the brand, and that's what I'm talking about. Like Texas has the athletes, Georgia has the athletes, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, they all have the athletes, right? So they pass this eye test. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Oregon. I do genuinely believe Oregon is the best team in the country right now, and they have literally shown no flaws. So get that out of the way. But it's the difference between eye test is why Miami's there with their bad loss, which doesn't seem to matter apparently, which they dropped 5. I get it, but not out of the top 10. And then you have SMU sitting at 14 with a quality loss and 1 loss and a couple pretty good wins, and they're not even in the conversation other than, they'll probably play Miami in the ACC championship.
And beat them. They're probably going to play Miami.
If they beat them, then that's problem solved. They get one of those 4 spots most likely. They should.
Well, the thing is Miami's been, they were almost burned so many times this year. It's not like if you watch a Miami game, it's like if you just look at it and say, oh, well, hey, Miami, that's an 8-1 football team, they got to be good. It's like, but if you've actually watched their games, it's like almost all of them have been close.
They blew out some people. They rely on Cam Ward to create magic at the end of these games. If you actually watch these games, which I know you have, but I'm saying to other people, they actually sit down and watch a full-length Miami game. They don't play well in the first half. They actually play pretty bad in the first half. And then so it's always close, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, all these games, Duke, all these games are close up until the end, and they're like, all right, Cam Ward, go create magic. And he does, and they win. But it's like, okay, they just lost to Georgia Tech. Now go play Oregon.
Yeah.
Go play, and I would argue go play Tennessee's defense. Go play Oklahoma's defense. I'm not saying Oklahoma would necessarily win that game because your offense doesn't have a pulse, but go play a defense like that and see if he can do that. Then I'm impressed. But until then,
go play, South Carolina, who's, number 21. If you were picking a game between Miami
in South Carolina too.
Yeah. If you're picking a game between Miami and South Carolina, who are you taking?
If it's in South Carolina, not like it would really matter much if it's in Miami, but if it's in South Carolina, it's like, what would what would the spread be? Probably. I would argue that if it's not South Carolina favored, it's probably like Miami -2.
Yeah.
Something like that. But anyways.
Anything else that stands out to you in the top 25 besides I got a note about Army being at 24.
We did briefly touch on that before we went live, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, so Army, they just had a really good win over UNT that had been a really explosive offense all year. UNT been putting up tons of points, and they get into a game with Army, and Army just grinds them to death, bro. It's like getting put into a freaking meat grinder, and they just drag it out. They end up winning 14-3. We'll talk about it a little bit later here on the show, but yeah, Army at 9-0. I get it. They don't really have a prolific win. They don't have a good win, but they also don't have any loss.
Yeah. It's that I will say that for right now, because they don't really have any wins, even though they're undefeated, that's pretty standard. Even going back to BCS.
Yeah.
We saw with Tulane, they were hesitant with Tulane. They were hesitant with App State when they were undefeated. They were hesitant with Coastal, even BYU before the Big 12. Like, they're hesitant when these teams are undefeated a couple years ago. So I get it. Now, if they were to beat Notre Dame, which this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, if they were to beat Notre Dame and then win out and they beat Navy, and they go 12-0, I'd argue they're in over Boise State.
Yeah.
I mean, they should be based on what the criteria they said it was. Best Group of 5 conference champion.
Yeah, and with a win over Notre Dame, I mean,
That's a
what's
top
really
10
the
win.
argument? Yeah. What's the argument?
And Boise State doesn't have a top 10 win. They have a quality loss to Oregon.
Yeah. And which they played Oregon tight.
Yeah. Their best win is 18 Washington State.
Yeah.
Right? So if you go win to win, I would go Army, and they're undefeated.
Which is still better than anything Miami has on their schedule. So,
well, there's that also. Yeah, well, because that's the thing, though, right? So we could make the argument they wouldn't do this, but we could make the argument they get that one of those top 4 spots in the first round bye over Miami.
Yeah,
but
that's about all I got on the top 25.
Yeah. And the only other thing I was really going to say was that. And we don't have to go into a whole conversation about this. This kind of ties everything together, what I was talking about earlier, where they put Tennessee and where they put Georgia. And we're going to talk about that game. But this, as a Tennessee fan, notice this. And then just in general, as a college football fan for Georgia, it shows that the committee they kept Tennessee at 7, which I didn't like. I think we should at least be at 6. But I also believe BYU should be at 3. So I'm not saying we take BYU spot. Just saying that we should be at 6 over a couple of those other teams. But anyways, they kept them at 7, and then they put Georgia at 12, just outside. But if they lose, they're trying to create a story rather than picking the best teams in the 12 that go. They're trying to create by them I mean the committee. The committee is trying to create a story of this game to make this game matter even more than it already does. Because now with Tennessee at 7. And Georgia at 13, 12. If either one loses, they're probably out of the playoff, most likely. You have an argument for Tennessee more so than Georgia, but it shows that the committee's trying to make it bigger for I don't know if it's for views, popularity, whatever. But it's showing that they're trying to make these games more elimination games than it actually needs to be.
Well, I mean, technically, if you look at the projection right now, Georgia's out right now. If you look at the playoff projection, they're out.
See, but the projection, and that's what the committee they did they do the top 25, and then they do the top the seeding for the 12-team playoff. Yeah. And yes, Georgia right now is out. But that's before this game, right? So they're saying, if Georgia loses, they're definitely out. But Tennessee, because we're sitting at the 8 seed so we're number 7 in the country, but 8 seed in the playoff. We lose, and everybody else wins. They'll freaking put Ole Miss in there and they'll take us out. So it's like that's what they're creating, this elimination game deal.
Or A&M. I mean, A&M's lurking back there at 15 with a big game against Texas coming up.
Right. So that's the last thing I had to say about the ranking. I know that we were really getting into the meat and potatoes, but that's kind of what I wanted to do. Yeah. I wanted to talk about those rankings. So there's a lot going on. I guess I did have one more note. Just Colorado, pretty impressive. They control their own destiny. Literally, if they win out, they're in the playoff.
Hey, got to give a shout out to our boy Pettigrew on that one. He was on that Colorado train early. Looks like it's paying off. He was on Colorado a couple of years ago, and I told him, I was like 4-8, watch, and then they went 4-8, and I told him, he's like, I know, he's like, but just wait, and then I was like, I don't know, but he was right this year. So yeah. Granted, we got the first year right, but hey, you got to give him his flowers because they look pretty good this year.
Yeah, all they got to do is win out, and they're in to the playoff. Right.
Let's go ahead and hit our Week 12 predictions. So a couple big matchups for y'all. We're going to go through 4 games here. First one's going to be Clemson traveling to Pitt, take on Pitt. Man, this one, I got Clemson in this one. I think I think SMU might have broke them. They haven't looked like the same team, the same 7-0 team that came in. Even before then, I looked through, they were struggling with some early games on, they played some people close. So yeah, give me Clemson in this one. I mean, Clemson's favored by 12.5. I don't know if they're going to cover that, but I will take Clemson to win the game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going with Clemson. It is a bounce-back game for Pitt, but it's a noon game. They don't have – when they're good, it shows that their fans show up a lot more. But noon game in Pittsburgh, it's going to be a quieter stadium. Like you said, I think SMU broke them as well. I am taking Clemson to cover. I'm taking Clemson.
All right, so you got Clemson pretty big, probably what, 2 scores?
Well, I mean that would have to be to cover.
Have to be.
But yeah, I mean I just think Cade Klubnik's actually playing good ball, and I just think their offense is going to be too much. I thought Pitt's defense was something else after the Syracuse game. As like you said, SMU seemed to break them, and I think Clemson's offense is at least as talented, if not more talented. And I'm saying talented, not better, but as talented, if not more talented than SMU's offense. So,
yeah, I'd say that they could be comparable. Like I said, the hire, whenever they hired Garrett Riley, it was supposed to be, kind of this big deal. He's the next, he's Lincoln Riley's little brother. So he's going to be the next Lincoln Riley. Hasn't really quite stuck, but we'll see if he's able to work it out. Yeah. Next game on the schedule, we got Arizona State traveling to Manhattan, Kansas, take on Kansas State. For this one, man, I gotta go Kansas State. Avery Johnson, Kansas State's quarterback, he's played really well at home. His struggles.
I said that too.
Yeah, his struggles have come. It's like I've said all season, and you can go back and watch the other episodes. He's kind of been a roller coaster, but his downs have come on the road. At home, he's been pretty consistent, played pretty well. So I would expect Kansas State to probably be able to put up some points here and be able to control the game with their defense.
Yeah. For this one, man, it's so they're both 7-2. For those who don't know, because ASU has kind of been quietly hanging around in the Big 12 this year, but they're 7-2, as well as K-State. I am also going with K-State. I think playing in Manhattan plays a huge role, not only because the fans are actually pretty loud there for what the size of the stadium is, but I said the same thing. Avery Johnson at home plays way better ball than he does on the road. If ASU can get Scatabo going early, they might have, they have a pretty good chance. And ASU is also not only a quiet team, but they're also kind of a wild card this year. So you really don't know what ball they're playing. The Utah win looked better, but as the season went on, it didn't. But man, yeah, I'm going with K-State. I think Avery Johnson will take care of it.
Yeah,
this could have implications too, though. I'm saying.
Yeah, it could.
Playoff implications.
But with how do you say it? Scatabo? You did really good on it.
Scatabo.
Yeah, Scatabo. He's facing the number one rushing defense in the Big 12 conference, so bodes well for Kansas State. Try to make them one-dimensional.
Yeah,
if they can contain him.
If ASU can get him going early somehow, then it would be different. But yeah, I don't see it happening. Is what I'm saying. All
right, let's roll on to the next one. We've kind of become Missouri haters. I'm sorry. It kind of came through unnaturally. I just don't think they're very good. They beat Oklahoma. I'll give them their flowers. They beat Oklahoma. But anybody who watched that game, you're like, well, dang, Oklahoma's the better team. They just can't figure it out. They can't figure out how to win a football
themselves in the foot.
Yeah, oh God. Either way, enough about Oklahoma. Missouri traveling to South Carolina, take on the Gamecocks in South Carolina. 3:15 kick. South Carolina is now favored by 14. And
I was going to say, what's the spread?
I would take them to even. Right. I would take them to even cover that.
If they can start that game,
I don't think
start the game like they did against. Sorry,
you're good.
Go ahead.
I don't think Brady Cook's going to play. He's been questionable. Like I said, he was questionable for the OU game. We'll see if he plays. If it's Drew Pine, Dylan Stewart, and Kyle Kennard, they're going to make. They are going to make
his day hell.
They're going to make Drew Pine probably go into retirement after this game. I mean, I didn't think Missouri's offensive line was very good. Even playing against Oklahoma's D-line, which is still a very good unit. So I think, give me South Carolina and let them cover here. Absolutely.
I'm not going to say whether or not they cover because I have a contingency on it. But if they can, I will say if South Carolina, I am picking South Carolina. That is one of the most underrated. And I honestly, prior to becoming a podcaster, my bias, I hate South Carolina. So, but I will say South Carolina, one of the most underrated stadiums in the country, loud as hell.
With that defense, I mean, they are
with that defense.
good.
If they can, so my contingency on them covering is they'll cover if they start like they did against LSU. I know LSU won that game, but if they can start like that against Mizzou, it'll turn into the A&M Mizzou game, in my opinion. So,
Well, I mean,
I am taking South Carolina though.
we also got to. I just want to throw this out there for those Gamecock fans. There was a questionable on that pick six that got returned. Questionable call that negated it.
Yeah.
So in that LSU game, so South Carolina, they've been playing very good football. They are very good on the defensive side of the ball. So yeah, I think we both got South Carolina. So no differences so far in our picks. So let's roll on to the game of the week, man. Game of the week. I'll let you go ahead and kick it off. You get to introduce this one.
Yeah, so we're talking about Tennessee going down to Athens, playing between the hedges at Georgia. Yeah, I mean, Tennessee's been very nervous about this because it goes into what I said last week about Georgia and Kirby Smart, right? So now they're probably in elimination, most likely in elimination game for them. 2 losses. Kirby Smart hasn't lost 3 games, I believe, since his first year at Georgia. Sorry.
It's all good.
But so it's like for me, when Ole Miss beat them last week, I was like, crap. Because now we got this Georgia team, right? And we're going to Athens. Tennessee's going to Athens in a sold-out night game. We saw what happened the last time we played when Tennessee played on the road in a sold-out night game. It was Arkansas, by the way. The other thing, right, Nico, he's questionable. If he plays, we might have a fighting chance. But right now, we don't even know if he's playing.
How does this always happen? You got too much Tennessee fan in you, I swear. It's like every time we discuss them, you're like, well, I don't know. That's like they may win. And I'm like always way higher on them than what you are.
Okay, it's the batter. It's it's the BBS. Is what it's called. It's called battered ball syndrome.
Yeah.
We're used to it, and this is the BBS goes across all sports. This happens every year in one of the sports, whether it be women's basketball, men's baseball, football, any team sport that gets a backing because they're so good. It always break our hearts somewhere. I mean, it was 2022 football. We went to South Carolina. We were 9-1, I believe, going into that game. We were back at number 5 or number 6 in the country. All we had to do was win out, and we were in the playoff. 14 playoff, mind you. So this was a big deal, right? All we had to do was win. Our only loss was to Georgia. We had beat Alabama, and we were 10-1.
Should have been.
I don't remember. I think we were 10-1. I think we were in 10-1 because then we had Vandy and we beat them. So yeah, or no, we were 9-1. We were 9-1. Anyways, so yeah, we were 9-1. All we had to do was go to South Carolina, unranked South Carolina, at night and beat them, and we were good. I mean, that team was good, especially that offense. Man, we lost 63-38. 63-38. And this was a playoff deciding game for Tennessee. 63-38, and Hendon Hooker tore his ACL. So we're used to it, right? As fans, we're used to it, and that's what scares us. And so without Nico, look, I'm not taking anything away from our defense. I'm not taking anything away from Gaston Moore. Gaston Moore is a good quarterback, but he's not going to be the quarterback to beat a Georgia team, an Alabama team, an Ohio State. Like Nico's our guy, our starting guy. Even though he started slow and he's not having this crazy season, he's a redshirt freshman, and he's our guy, right? So we need him to play. Otherwise, I just don't see there being an outcome with everything on the line for Georgia and us down our starting quarterback. I don't see an outcome.
Okay.
Where Tennessee wins on the road at night in Athens.
All right.
And not only that, if Nico plays, he also needs to play lights out. We need to connect on those deep balls that Heupel will be calling. It's not an if, it's a when. They're there. We talk about it every week. They're there. Every game they're there. It's just we need to connect on them. Drops and overthrows, underthrows, whatever. I'd rather them underthrow it because there's at least a chance, right? And that's what we saw a couple times against Mississippi State. I didn't really talk about it. There's a couple little bit underthrown balls, but we scored on one of them or two of them. right? So you can give your guys a chance, but he needs to play lights out if he does play, which he's questionable. One thing on the defensive side that might help, which like I said, our defense, Tennessee's defense, national championship caliber defense, no questions there. I think we've buried all the question marks there. Good thing for them, a pro for Tennessee, Trevor Etienne being ruled out on the Georgia side. Georgia's running back, Trevor Etienne. I think that really helps because it gives, and I'm not saying they're not going to, but it gives a lower probability for Georgia to run the ball like they did against Texas, because that's the biggest concern. Because Texas's D-line is very similar. Texas defense as a whole is very similar to Tennessee. And you saw what they did on the ground. It was old school Georgia football, downhill. Yeah, like I said, win or go home game for probably both, but definitely Georgia. So that's what I'm more concerned about.
All right. Georgia's a 9.5-point favorite.
Yeah, and 10-point favorite in some other lines.
Yeah. So, Monty, who you picking?
I really don't know. Man. Oh, this one, it's tough. Like, I still have faith in Tennessee. They can do it. I just don't think they're going to do it. I'm going with Georgia.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. Give me the balls. And just my thoughts on it, right? So if Nico plays, I've already said, I said it 2 episodes ago that I believe Tennessee was the number 1 defense in the SEC. Tennessee's defense, as far as most complete. I mean, with Jerrod McCoy playing on the outside, top flight, Thorpe Award semifinalist. You'll see, we'll see how that award plays out. You got James Pierce on the line, just a complete defensive unit. Carson Beck, I've already mentioned his struggles. 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in SEC play. And they haven't played this Tennessee defense.
I agree. And so I do want to say, I think that this game, I don't take Georgia to cover. I can't even say that. So I think the game is going to be where Georgia doesn't cover. I think it's going to be like Georgia's Kentucky game.
Okay.
I do. I genuinely think it's going to be more like that. But I will also say, and I agree with Josh Pate when he said this. He said the doors can be blown wide open on either side. Tennessee can take the top off at any moment in this game, but all you need is one good game from Carson Beck and that run game, like they did against Texas. And and if Nico doesn't play, so.
Yeah, like I said, that is a question I have, because if Nico doesn't play, Georgia's defense is going to get to put more pressure on Dylan Sampson, which, you mentioned Trevor Etienne being out for Georgia. It's like he's put up 475 rushing yards for the year. Dylan Sampson's put up 1,129.
That's the thing. So their stats as a team, their run game, their rushing yards per game, like Georgia statistically is bad this year.
Yeah.
But I don't care what anybody says. You saw the capability against Texas. And I watched that game. I watched that game play 0 to play minute 60. That was old school Georgia pound the rock football, and you saw what happened.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't really get the 9.5-point spread. Especially if Nico plays, I think he will. I'm just going with my gut on that one. If for anybody who knows me, I am not a Tennessee insider, so do not quote me on that. I'm just going with my gut feeling. I think Nico is going to play. Because I understand even if he wasn't, wanting to keep it close to the chest, so Georgia maybe has to prepare for him. However, I just see Tennessee as being the more complete team, and I think Carson Beck is going to make some mistakes to give Tennessee this game and give Nico a short field to where they can get some points, and hopefully Tennessee can be able to capitalize on those points. That's why I'm going with Tennessee.
I'm sticking with Georgia, but I will say the difference makers in the game are Carson Beck turnovers and how he plays, and Nico if he plays.
Yep. All right, so we are different on one game. We're both picking Clemson, both picking K-State.
I'm sorry, Tennessee fans. I'm sorry, but
both picking South Carolina, and then I'm picking the Vols, and you're going with the Dogs. So let's go ahead and roll on, man. Let's hit our dubs and duds of the week. As always, let's kick somebody in the nuts. Monty, who do you have as your dud of the week?
Well, we have the same one we talked about.
Yeah, it actually is right. We do have the same one.
I had a couple other things I was thinking about, but I kind of let you talk me into this one, so I'll let you talk more about this one. But
let's burn them down. Yep. We've already spent a good amount of this episode burning down Miami, so let's go ahead and hit Miami. They finally got burned by Georgia Tech. Miami's been playing with fire all year.
It was not an if. It was a win.
It's only a win whenever you play that many close nail biter games. And Cam Ward, ran out of magic. I guess you could say that.
I guess they relied on too much of it, and he didn't have it that game.
Yeah, so had to go with Miami on that one as the dud of the week. Not much else. I mean, we've kind of already really buried it in this episode.
Not taking anything away from Georgia Tech, though. They played a great scheme game. They took the ball away from that offense.
Yeah.
There was I think at one point they had like an 8-minute drive or something. Like they kept that offense off the field. So props to them. But I knew it was going to happen this year. So, so we finally got Miami in a dud.
Finally got Miami in a dud of the week. So, Monty, let's go ahead. We can switch it to a positive note here. Who do you have as your dub of the week?
So my dub of the week, this is going back to that Ole Miss Georgia game. I'm going with Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin as a whole. I mean, playing because, right, we were talking about it early on in the season. Like every episode we were like, oh, the identity, we don't know the identity of this team yet. We don't know the identity of this team yet. We never knew where anybody was.
Yeah.
And as the end of the season is coming, like we start to see more. But this was Ole Miss's identity game. So Ole Miss is probably a top 10 team. We know that now. After this win against Georgia, because I still think Georgia's a really good team. After the win against Georgia, solidified Lane Kiffin's last offseason, building this team to be an SEC top 10 team. And this showed it was an identity game that they won, and they identified themselves, to the rest of the country who Ole Miss football is, at least this year and probably moving forward. So that's my dub of the week. Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin collectively.
Yeah.
Finding their identity. Staying alive.
This thought just kind of came to my head as you were going through that. I mean, you almost could have went with the transfer portal if you think about it, because if you think about
the transfer portal, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you think about the two teams, it's like when you think about two teams that rely on the transfer portal, Ole Miss, Colorado. Both looking really good this year.
And you could make a fair argument with Texas, but
yeah, you can make a fair argument with Texas too, and even Miami. But that's everybody wondered whether or not that Ole Miss culture was going to be able to withstand, taking all these parts and pieces and plugging them in, and it's shown to be a pretty formidable product, especially with the manhandling that they gave Georgia. So yeah, that's a good dub of the week. For me, I had to go with Army over UNT.
Oh yeah.
Now Army, they ended up winning 14-3. But I mean, this is a UNT team that everybody they played, they had put points up against. I mean, they put 37 on Tulane, 44 on Memphis, 41 on Florida Atlantic, 52 on Tulsa. I mean, they put points on everybody. And Army was just able to bring them in and grind them up, spit them out, man. It's an Army
football, baby.
Yeah, Army moved to 9-0, and hey, that's like I said, that's more than impressive. Especially Army having that competitive team in the environment that is college football today. Obviously Army, it's they don't get to do a lot of the stuff that other universities get to do.
Still running the veer. Still damn good at it.
Yeah.
Man, I hope that team makes the playoff. I really do. I really hope they can beat Notre Dame and make it.
I think America is pulling for Army. Not this week, but come next week. So we'll be sure to touch on that next week's episode. So I had to go with that for my dub of the week. So should I just go ahead? You want to go ahead and get this hot take?
Yeah, so I don't have a hot take this week. So no Monty's weekly hot take, but we do have a Murdy hot take on the show. So
Yeah.
I'll let you go ahead and give it to him.
So Murdy's hot take. All right, everybody knows Oklahoma is going to be in the market for a new offensive coordinator. Well, I can tell you right now, go ahead, quit looking. If all you Oklahoma fans, if y'all want to go ahead and just zone in on who your guy is, I'll tell you who it is. It's going to be Joe Craddock, Tulane's offensive coordinator. He's got some previous ties to Brent Venables. They coached together back at Clemson from 2012 to 2014. He's been the lead of a bunch of prolific offenses. He does have some down years at Arkansas with Chad Morris kind of running things. How much was the offense was in his control, that's still up for debate, but put up dynamic offenses in 2015, 2016, and 2017 at SMU. And now he led some good offenses at Troy, and now he's leading Tulane. Man, I love this dude's offense. I love how he schemed. All right. So, yeah, Joe Craddock, he's going to be the next offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. I think he will be a great hire. Now, is he going to be – it's not like you're going out and, hiring some Dan Mullen, it's not some huge name. But what I do believe is that he fits Brent Venables' culture. He understands what kind of physicality Brent Venables wants his teams to play with, and he'll be a good stylistic match for that defense. He plays a slower, they huddle, rare to see. It's a pro-style offense, rare to see in college football, but allowing him to play that slower pace will allow that defense to finally get a break. And if they can methodically move the ball down the hill with the outside zone run scheme, OU has some good guys on the offensive line, young guys, but they can move. I mean, they have, can move out, move laterally. I mean, I think Eddie Pierre-Louis, he's like 300 pounds. He runs like a 12-second freaking 100-meter dash. Have you ever seen the video of him?
No.
The guy is ridiculous. Yeah, Eddie Pierre-Louis, he's like 300-something pounds, but he runs a 12, I think it's like a 12.5 or something, 100-meter dash. There's a video of it, so y'all go look it out, check it out. But yeah, OU offensive coordinator, Joe Craddock. I'm going to go ahead and welcome him to the team because I already know it's happening.
That's good. That's good research. Good research by a fan. I'm sure some would argue that's not as hot of a take as you might think it is.
Well, it's not necessarily hot. Like I said, he's one of the 5 names that you see floating around.
Okay.
But everybody's like, well, maybe this guy or maybe this guy. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there, get it out early, and say, hey, Joe Craddock, that's going to be the Oklahoma offensive coordinator for 2025.
Only time will tell.
Other than that, Monty, we got anything you want to say on the outro of the show? We can go ahead and close it up.
No, nothing. Just the same old. Thank you for whoever's out there listening to us. Obviously, we enjoyed talking about it. As you saw today, we kind of nerded out or I guess maybe more so, I nerded out with the playoff talk. That's the stuff I freaking love talking about. So appreciate whoever tunes in to listen to that stuff. Just thank you and hopefully keep listening.
Yeah, man. Overall, the show it's kind of been growing. We're doing okay. So y'all, like I said, best way to spread the show is word of mouth. Tell y'all's friends. Try to get them to listen in. If they hate it, tell their friends. Maybe they'll like it.
Tell them to tell their friends, man, you got to listen to this stuff. It is so bad. Tell them that.
Yeah. Overall, man, thank y'all for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the show. Subscribe to our social media accounts on Twitter or X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Wherever you listen to podcasts, set up notifications, set up alert. Comment, let us know anything that we're doing or not doing that you would like to see us kind of add to the show. And until next week, we'll catch y'all. Peace.